Devaki Nandan Prabhu. It's not Prabhu's first visit. And Garden Prabhuji, thank you. He's visited us many times in the past, but we're happy to welcome him back again in Toronto. Prabhu is a disciple of His Holiness Mahavishnu Goswami Maharaj, and he was introduced to the process of Krishna consciousness back in 1983 in Singapore. By profession, Prabhuji is a lawyer, and he has various responsibilities within ISKCON. He's a zonal supervisor in Singapore, and given his professional background as a lawyer, he's also the legal counsel, general legal counsel for ISKCON and the GBC body worldwide. And he's very actively involved in a lot of outreach programs and initiatives in Singapore. Prabhuji loves to speak from Srimad Bhagavatam since he's been reading for over 4 decades. And today's session is also going to be on a very specific verse from Srimad Bhagavatam, which Prabhuji will speak about very shortly. We're very happy that he's here to give his association with us. Please join me in welcoming Devaki Nandan Prabhu.
Thank you very much. Time is of the essence, so I'm going to start singing Jai Radha, and then after that we can look at this really nice verse from Srimad Bhagavatam, which I think when you read it, you will find that it applies to a lot of us actually. So let's chant first. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Jaya Giri Maradhari Patichutam tishtati tishtarakshitam. If you can follow it. Try. Patichutam tishtati tishtarakshitam. Grihe svitam tat vihatam vinashyati. Jivatyanaatopi tadikshito vani. Grahe vikukto syahato na jivati. Let's look at the translation. You can read the translation with me because then you feel more engaged. Sometimes one loses his money on a public street where everyone can see it, and yet his money is protected by destiny and not seen by others. Thus the man who lost it gets it back. On the other hand, if the Lord does not give protection, even money maintained very securely at home is lost. If the Supreme Lord gives one protection, even though one has no protector and is in the jungle, one remains alive. Whereas a person well protected at home by relatives and others sometimes dies, no one being able to protect him. Let's hear the purport. These are examples of the supremacy of the Lord. Our plans to protect or annihilate do not act, but whatever He thinks of doing actually happens. The examples given in this regard are practical. Everyone has had such practical experiences, and there are also many other clear examples. For instance, Prahlad Maharaj said that a child is certainly dependent on his father and mother, but in spite of their presence, the child is harassed in many ways. Sometimes, in spite of a supply of good medicine and an experienced physician, a patient does not survive. Therefore, since everything is dependent on the free will of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, our only duty is to surrender unto Him and seek His protection. Jai Shri Prabhupada ki Jai. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakya Chakshurum Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. When you were reading the translation, some of you may have realized that this kind of a situation may have happened to you before. Sometimes you think you can protect something very well, but the very thing that you protect well is the thing that leaves you. And sometimes the thing that you leave unprotected, that thing can somehow survive. Sometimes we try so hard to avoid something that is going to come. But despite all our attempts to avoid it, it comes. And sometimes we make no effort to welcome something, but despite us not even wanting to welcome it, it nevertheless comes on its own accord. So Bhagavatam is telling us that these things happen to us not by accident, but very often they are the arrangement of the Lord. A very good example is a very nice illustration from the Mahabharata. In the Mahabharata, there is a question that is asked by a yaksha, who's actually Dharmaraj, to Yudhishthira Maharaj. And he asked this question, what is the most wonderful thing in the world? And Yudhishthira Maharaj replies very beautifully, the most wonderful thing in the world is that every day someone is dying. Yet those who live actually believe that they will live forever. If you think about it, that's what very often happens to us also. If we go to a funeral, for example, and we see someone has left the world, it doesn't strike us that that could really happen to us anytime. And yet in our minds, there's always this niggling point that says, it'll happen to everyone except me. It won't happen today to me at least. It'll happen another time, but it won't be today. Everyone else may leave, but I will not leave. In the Mahabharata, there is a very beautiful story of this bird. This bird was sitting on the branch of a tree, and it looked down and it saw Yamaraj, the superintendent of death, and he was smiling at the bird. Now, normally when people smile at you, you should be happy. But when Yamaraj is smiling at you, I'm not sure if you're going to be very happy. So the bird got very scared, and it started praying very hard to its cousin, Garuda. And Garuda came to its rescue. And the bird said, Garuda, look at Yamaraj. He's just smiling at me. He's got this sinister smile on his face. Please take me away from here as soon as you can. So Garuda thought, yes, he's my cousin. I'm very powerful. Let me bring you far, far away from Yamaraj. And so he put the bird on his broad shoulders, and he brought him over to the end of the 7 continents of this entire universe. And the moment he came to this very remote part of the continent, there was a tree, and Garuda put the bird on the branch of the tree, and within a minute, the bird died. Now Garuda looked down from the tree, upset and shocked, and he saw Yamaraj standing right there, and he was smiling his smile. So Garuda was very upset. He said, I took so much trouble to bring the bird all the way here. And how is it that you are here also? And why is it that you are smiling? And Yamaraj said, in the morning when I looked through the file, and I looked through all the list of persons I'm supposed to meet today. You know, when Yamaraj meets someone, it means it's the last meeting, right? And he said that when I looked at this, I was thinking of this bird. Because when I looked at the location that the bird was going to die in, and I looked at the location in which it was there, I was thinking maybe somebody got something wrong here. Because how is the bird going to leave the world very, very far away? But then Garuda, you came and you solved that very difficult problem that I was having. It's a very simple story, but it tells you something about the power of what we call providence. You could use different words if you want, but in this shloka today, Bhagavatam is telling us something really important, that we think that we can protect ourselves, and very often we think that we are in control, and we believe that we can engineer our lives in such a way that it will go exactly the way we want it to. But you and I know that very often in your experience, sometimes you get away with it, but more often than not, sometimes you are going in a completely opposite direction. So this verse is very, very powerful because it tells us that that which is going to be protected will not be protected by you and me. If it is going to be protected, it will be protected by the Supreme Lord. This is very important. So, the point of the verse is, the more faith we have in Krishna, the more we come to understand and accept His plans. When Krishna has a plan for us, you can only have 2 reactions to the plans. You can either have expectations, Krishna, I want this, I want that, I want this, I want that. Or you could have acceptance. Right? They sound very much alike, expectations and acceptance, but one can bring peace to us and the other can bring a lot of anxiety to us. In your life, you will find that the more you expect things of others, the more disappointed you are. The higher your expectations, the more likely you are to be disappointed. But if you learn to see the hand of Krishna in the most difficult or challenging of times, and if you learn to accept that there is a plan that the Lord has for you, in that acceptance, Krishna gives you the strength to be able to face any situation that you have. This is the greatness of trying to understand your relationship with Krishna. This is very important. And that is why, even in the Mahabharata, for example, many personalities wanted to have their plan superimposed upon Krishna. If you recall Mahabharata, there was Gandhari, and she was the mother of the Kauravas. And one night, she told her son, Duryodhana, she told him, come and see me in the night, under the cloak of darkness, because when you come and see me, I will use all the powers that I've gained by being blindfolded. And I will make sure that I will shield you very powerfully, so that when the war begins, you will be indestructible. The only thing you have to do, my son, is when you come to see me, come without any clothes. So when everybody went to sleep, Duryodhana decided to walk out of his camp. And he started walking. When he turned the corner, of all people in the three worlds to see, taking a walk in the night was Krishna. Krishna looked at Duryodhana and started smiling. Duryodhana, what are you doing in the middle of the night with no clothes on? And now Duryodhana started thinking, actually this is a very embarrassing situation, to be walking in the camp as a warrior with no clothes on. So then he said, Krishna, I'm just going to see my mother. So Krishna smiled even more. And Krishna said, of all things, to see your mother without any clothes, you are a grown-up man. Put on something at least and go and see your mother. And so Duryodhana said, I will do that. But in his heart he was thinking, I'll put on a gamcha. But when I reach there and see my mother, I will remember to take it off. How many times have we done that? Not the gamcha part, but the part where you try to tell yourself, I remember I'm going to do it, but practically speaking, right, it slips your mind anyway. So he walks the walks and Krishna walks away. And the moment he enters into the camp, and he enters into the quarters of Gandhari, Gandhari has not seen him yet. But Gandhari says, Duryodhana, are you there, my son? Yes, mother, I'm ready. Are you sure you're ready? Yes. Okay, now, be prepared. And so she takes off the fold of the blindfold, and she uses her tejas, her power, her influence, to try and shield Duryodhana. Except that Duryodhana has forgotten to take out his towel or his gamcha. And at the end of the day, the very area of his thighs that should have been protected by Gandhari, that will be the most weakened area, and that will be the cause of his downfall. Now when Gandhari had done what she had done, she was very upset. And she said, I give you simple instructions. Just take off your clothes and come and stand before me. What happened? And Duryodhana looked very sheepish. And he said, Mother, for some reason as I took a walk to you, I met with Krishna. And Gandhari thought of all people to meet, he meets Krishna. And she said, what did Krishna tell you? And he said, Krishna told me to just put on something before I see you. But Mother, I was mindful of the fact that I should take it off. And why did you not do that? And Duryodhana had no answer to it. If you have read 15:15 of Bhagavad Gita, you will know that Krishna declares that I give remembrance, I give memory, and I also give forgetfulness. So the next time you sit for an exam and you forget something, of course you can tell your parents, 15:15, what can I do? Krishna gave me forgetfulness. My daughter did that with me. You know, it didn't work, but she tried. But my point is that Gandhari had one plan. You see, she had one plan. Her plan was to ensure that that Duryodhana would be indestructible. So very often we have a plan. But then Gandhari's plan could not supersede Krishna's plan. This is the important point. Gandhari's plan could not supersede Krishna's plan. Krishna, we may intend in this material world. You all intended to come to the temple, right? So you thought about it. Then after a while you decided, let me come to the temple. But until Krishna superintends, you cannot walk into this temple. You can't. Until he decides and he gives the sanction that you can walk into here. No matter what you try, you cannot. There have been situations, I'm sure, when you really wanted to come and somehow it didn't work out, right? So that shows us that you may have one plan, but as spirit souls, part and parcel of Krishna, we must learn to accept Krishna's plans. Those who accept Krishna's plans, they become free from the cycle of birth and death. In 331 of Bhagavad Gita, this point is nicely stated. Ye me matam idam nityam anutishtanti manavaha shraddhavanto anasuyanto muchanti tepi karmabihi. Very important verse. Krishna says, those who follow my injunctions. Injunctions means his instructions. Krishna's instructions are as good as Krishna's plans. Please remember that. Sometimes we say, how do I know Krishna's plans? Krishna's plans are given in his instructions. So if you read Bhagavad Gita and you are guided by the Gita, you are guided by the instructions of Krishna. And therefore, you are guided by his plan. You see the point? So therefore, in 331, Krishna says, those who follow my injunctions, right? And they execute their duties according to my injunctions. And how do they follow this? This is very important. They follow it in two ways. Shraddhavanto, it means you follow it with faith. And second, anasuyanto, without envy. Duryodhana was envy personified. Therefore, it was very difficult for him to follow Krishna's plans. Arjuna was just the opposite of Duryodhana. He had no envy for Krishna and he had no envy for the living entities. Therefore, for him, it was very easy to follow Krishna's plans. You see the point? So actually, these two qualities will define how we accept Krishna's plans. If we are faithful to his instructions, if we are free of envy in our hearts of Krishna, then Krishna guarantees that we will be free from the bondage of material activities. Sometimes we may say, but sometimes it's so difficult to accept Krishna's plans. But you will learn to accept Krishna's plans when you practice devotional service. The more we practice devotional service, the more we chant, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. The more we chant, the more Krishna gives us the strength to accept his plans. This is very important. Arjuna did not want to fight on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, right? You know that. He had so many salient arguments why he did not want to fight. But at the end of the day, Krishna defeated all his arguments. And Arjuna surrendered to Krishna not on the basis of just being a friend, but now Krishna, I accept what you have to tell me. That acceptance is how you understand the plan of Krishna. Very important. And what was the plan of Krishna for Arjuna in the battlefield of Kurukshetra? 1133 of Bhagavad Gita. Mayai vaite kuhata, right? Mayai vaite nihata purva evam. Nimitta matra bhavya savyasachi. Krishna tells Arjuna, Arjuna, you are savyasachi. Savyasachi means one who is very expert in shooting arrows. Actually, if you read this verse very carefully, Krishna is being transcendently sarcastic, right? Because what he's doing is, he's telling Arjuna, Arjuna, no one shoots arrows like you. But I've got news for you. On the battlefield of Kurukshetra, before you have fired a single arrow, by my arrangement, those who are to be killed will perish. And by my arrangement, those who will survive, they will live. So then what is Arjuna's role in the battle of Kurukshetra? Nimitta matra, bhavya savyasachi. Become an instrument in the hand of the Lord. That is how we become ready to accept Krishna's plan. You know what is the most beautiful thing about an instrument? A knife in the hand of a surgeon can heal. A knife in the hand of a thief can hurt. But nobody is going to blame the knife. Nobody is going to praise the knife. They will either praise the surgeon or they will condemn the criminal. But the knife is just knife. It is very peaceful, it is very neutral. That is the position that we must take as devotees. Become instruments in the hand of Krishna. The more we learn to accept his plans, the more he gives us the strength to accept the plans. But the more we resist the plans of Krishna, the more difficult it becomes for us to accept his plans. Why? Because we will expect things from Krishna. And when you expect, you're always disappointed. Isn't it true? Very difficult to meet each person's expectations. Very difficult. You know, If you come to the temple and you expect it must be like that, it must be like this, it will be very difficult. But if you walk into the temple and you accept the temple for what it is, then everything becomes very nice. If you expect prasadam is going to be super good, then even if it is good, you will be disappointed. But if you accept that whatever prasadam is prasad, then even if the prasadam for some reason was not good, it will always taste good for you. Isn't it true? If you have an expectation of a friend, it is very hard for the relationship to grow. Because very often we cannot meet each other's expectation. But when we accept each other for who we are, then no matter how difficult it is, our acceptance allows us to cross over that difficulty. It's the same principle in Krishna consciousness. Learn to accept, not so much to expect. That is very important. Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki. Srila Prabhupada ki. Srila Gurudev ki. Jai Gaura Premanande. I decided I'll stop at 7 so that if there are any questions, any violent objections to what I said, you will be free to ask or you can be free to bring it up. Yes.
That was a wonderful lecture. My question was that if Krishna is the supreme protector, does that mean that we have very passive roles?
If Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead, does it mean that we have a passive role?
Yeah. So if you depend on Krishna, to what extent does that influence how much action?
Very good question. Did you get it? Right? The point is, if we accept the supremacy of Krishna, does it mean that our role in Krishna consciousness or our role in life is to take a passive role? We just sit back and we say, Krishna, do with me as you do. If that happens, you will never leave your house to come to the temple. Right? Because you just sit back and say, Krishna, I'm in your hands. Now move the bus here, move me on the bus, put me in the taxi. So your question is very important. Arjuna is a good example. Arjuna accepted that he must fight for Krishna. But the moment he accepted it, he fought the battle of his life. He was very proactive. In Bhagavatam, there is another episode in the first canto, 7th chapter. The Brahmastra, which is released by Ashwatthama, was coming at full speed, and Krishna and Arjuna were on the chariot. Now the problem with the Brahmastra is that Ashwatthama could shoot the Brahmastra, but he did not have the capacity to retrieve it or pull it back. Now if the Brahmastra came and found its target, the whole world would suffer. Arjuna was fully capable of taking care of the Brahmastra. But what does he do? Because he is a devotee of the Lord, he stops Krishna on the chariot. He comes down in the 7th chapter of the first canto. He does Achaman, and then he circumambulates Krishna. And then he sings a beautiful prayer. Krishna, Krishna, Mahabaho, Bhaktanam Abhayankaraha, Tvammeko Dhayamananam, Apavargosi Samsritehe. And like this he chants 4 prayers. He says, Krishna, Krishna, you are the mighty armed one. You are the one who instills fearlessness in all of us. And only you can give us protection. Now after chanting those prayers, what does he do? After chanting the prayers and invoking the auspicious blessings of Krishna, then Arjuna proceeds to act. He's not passive. He then neutralizes the Brahmastra and he saves the day. So the answer to the question is, devotees are very proactive in Krishna consciousness, but they are always guided by the hand of the Lord. That's all you have to do. Before you start any endeavor, you please start with Krishna. You invoke Krishna. You chant Krishna's names. You turn to Him in the scriptures, and then you act. And when you act that way, you will always understand that you are an instrument. Is that helpful? It's a good question. Yes, Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dandavat Pranams for the insightful discourse. Prabhu, like when we have certain secular material roles to play at work or at home, and people don't accept us because they expect things that I guess we are not able to provide. So in that case, would it just be to really just make our peace with the situation? Do we just understand, start with Krishna and just do our dharma and just surrender that to the lotus feet of Krishna and make peace with it?
That's a good question. The point that you raised, Mataji, is actually linked to one important principle of this material world. That at the end of the day, no matter what endeavor we take in this world, every endeavor is covered by fault. The Bhagavad Gita confirms that. Which means no matter how well-intentioned you are, as long as you're in the material world, your endeavors will never be perfect. It will always be covered by some fault. And when it is covered by some fault, someone will always find fault with it. And it will never be perfect. We cannot wait for the world to change, nor for the situation to become perfect. Because we live in an imperfect world. What we can do is to try to make the best use of a bad bargain. That is what Srila Prabhupada told us, how we should live in this material world. The material world is a bad bargain. There is death, which is never easy. There is birth. None of you wanted to be born. None of you selected your parents. But in any event, you came to the world. And when you were born into the world, I don't know of a baby who was born smiling, joking, or laughing. All of us were born crying. And if we were not crying, the doctors would slap us in the posterior, and then we would all cry and everybody would become happy. So this world is very difficult. And in between Janma and Mrityu, there is Jara and Vyadi. There is sickness and there will always be old age. In your working places, when you manage things, even when you work with devotees, you will find that managing expectations is always a challenge. But if two people can learn to give and take, if we can apply the simple Vaishnava principle of humility and tolerance, then even if we are in the workplace and things can be very challenging, we should be determined to complete what is our duty. Like, take the case of me as a lawyer. I'm a litigator, which means I spend a lot of time in court. There are days when I prepare my client and I'm very sure I'm going to win the case. And that is the day when everything goes upside down. Then there are days when I tell my client, this is going to be a bad case for you. And his expectation is very low. I get into the court, suddenly the judge finds something that I could not find and my opponent could not find, and lo and behold, I've come out and I've won the case. And my client is very happy with me. In both cases, I still have to manage my expectations. One is, I'm super happy, but it is happening because of the arrangement of Krishna. And one, I may be not very happy or disappointed, but I also have to accept that that is the situation that is presented to me. So this is not going to leave us. As long as you have a sharir, these problems will continuously plague you. But Krishna consciousness will give you the strength, the endurance to be able to face this with the right attitude. I hope that's useful. Alright, that's all the time we have. Oh, we have one more. Yes.
Hare Krishna.
I go.
My question is, if the Krishna has
Little bit louder.
if a Krishna has a plan for us,
If Krishna has a plan for us,
so does our karma plays a role in that?
I was waiting for that question. Finally it came. I had very little time, but it's a very important question, right? If Krishna has a plan for us, and we have our karmas also, where do they intersect? That's the key question here. All of us seated here, we all have baggage from previous lives. And even as we are speaking now and doing things, the actions and the reactions continue to accrue. That is something that is inevitable in this material world. They will come, they will keep coming. But Krishna consciousness is so powerful that if you take it up seriously and you execute it in loving, unalloyed devotion to Krishna, to the extent of our surrender,
to that extent Krishna will reciprocate with his protection. So the devotee of the Lord is very confident that in any situation, whether the reactions are coming to him or the reactions are being taken care of Krishna, he sees the hand of Krishna in everything. That is the mood of the devotee. Parikshit Maharaj was cursed to die in 7 days. He could have either sat there and thought, is this my karma or is this Krishna's plan? Then 7 days would have passed and he would have died. But instead of wasting 7 days thinking whether it's karma or Krishna, he decided everything is coming from Krishna. So better I sit down and I study Bhagavatam. And in 7 days, whatever karmas that were meant to be would have been completely extinguished because of his unalloyed devotion to the Supreme Lord. So the point is, the mind will always ask you these questions. Should it be karma? Should it be Krishna? By the way, they both belong to Ks. Which ISKCON you want to belong to? The International Society for Karma Consciousness? Or you want to belong to the International Society for Krishna Consciousness? If we are more Krishna conscious, all karmas are taken care of naturally, without separate endeavor. The word in Sanskrit is yadrinchayaha. Without separate endeavor, the karmas of the devotee are burnt in the fire of devotional service. That should be the way we look at this group. But a very humble devotee, when he is in trouble, he doesn't blame Krishna. When he is in difficulty, he sees these difficulties as his previous misdeeds. It is my fault. But instead of wallowing and being morose about it, he increases the quality of his bhakti. That is the mood of the devotee. Tatte nukampam sushabi shamano bunjana evadma kritam vipakam. In the 10th canto, 14th chapter, this is exactly what Brahmaji prays. He says very nicely that a devotee of the Lord, when he is in difficulty, he endures. And he sees his difficulties as his fault. He never blames Krishna. But he is very, very much dedicated to performing his devotion service. Is that all right, Prabhu? Thank you very much for your time. Thank you. I wish you all the best in your spiritual life. Please, 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 don't make coming to the temple a ritual. This is not a ritual. We don't come to the temple because it is accruing good karma. If you come to the temple, bring your spirit with you. Put your heart into it. Otherwise, rituals will remain rituals. But if you put your spirit into it, then it becomes spiritual. Otherwise, it is just ritual. But when you put spirit into it, all these activities will become spiritual. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you once again, Devaki Nandan Prabhu, for being here with us this evening at ISKCON Toronto. Can we give a big round of applause once again? I'm sure some of you might have had some questions. We can always have Q&A for the rest of the evening. Time will still not be enough, but Prabhuji will be around for some time. If anybody would like to have a brief chat with him, you're most welcome to come by after the announcements. We'll be serving Prashadam shortly, but I need another 5 to 7 minutes of your attention as we have some important updates and announcements.